I stood quietly in the marble lobby of Aegis Global Tech, leaning against my janitorial cart, a feather duster limp in my hand. Across the atrium, my older brother, David, wearing a bespoke suit paid for by my stolen signing bonus, was screaming as 3 federal cybercrimes agents slammed him against the glass security barrier. The cuffs caught the light when they closed around his wrists, a small metallic click that seemed to silence the entire building. 2 months ago, I had passed 7 rounds of interviews to become senior director of Aegis's new AI defense project. My father intercepted the acceptance packet before I ever touched it. Using his connections and the fact that our legal names shared the same initial, the same clean gender-neutral shape on a government form, he forged the documents to make David the Vance who had earned the job. He told me if I said one word, he would destroy my name and put me on the street. So I said nothing. I put on a gray polo shirt and pushed a cart through the hallway I should have owned. They thought I was a broken, obedient daughter who had made peace with the dirt. They didn't know that the project David had taken over was a level 4 classified government contract requiring cryptographic key management he couldn't spell, let alone perform. When he panicked, when he tried to quietly outsource his own login credentials to a stranger overseas just to survive one more audit, he triggered a national security breach protocol. I didn't warn him. I walked into the chief security officer's office, set my mop against the wall, and placed a flash drive on his desk. Everything was on it. The forged signature, the altered HR file, the IP logs of a grown man trying to buy his way out of a job that was never his. I watched them drag my brother out, sobbing, past the reception desk where I used to imagine my own name on the directory. The CEO stepped out of the elevator, walked past the agents, past David, past all of it, and stopped in front of my cart. "Miss Vance," he said, "your corner office is ready." But to understand how we got here, I have to go back 3 years, to the night I opened an email that was never supposed to reach him. The offer letter arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because I had worked a double shift at my old firm, and my hands were still shaking from caffeine when the email chimed. Aegis Global Technologies, Senior Director, AI Defense Systems. I read it 4 times before I let myself believe it. 7 rounds. A technical panel that made 2 of my competitors walk out mid-interview. A final round where I built a live intrusion detection model on a whiteboard, while 3 men in expensive watches tried to find a flaw in it and couldn't. I called my mother first. She cried, the good kind of crying she didn't tell my father. He found out anyway. He always did. I should have known something was wrong when he asked, too casually over dinner, whether the offer had come by mail or by email. I told him both. A formal packet was being sent to confirm the security clearance paperwork since the role touched government contracts. He nodded slowly, in that way he had of nodding at me while already looking past me toward David, who was scrolling his phone under the table, uninterested, unemployed, unbothered. "That's wonderful, Clara," my father said, and I believed him. That was the mistake. I kept believing him for 6 more days. The packet never reached me. I checked the tracking number obsessively, delivered, front door, and yet it never appeared on the hall table where the mail always sat. When I asked my father if he'd seen it, he said no without looking up from his newspaper. He said it the way he said everything to me, flat, final, uninterested in being questioned. 3 weeks later, David got a haircut. He bought a suit he couldn't have afforded on his own. He stopped complaining about being unemployed and started talking vaguely, proudly, about the new job, in the tone of a man who'd finally proven something to somebody. I didn't put it together until I called Aegis HR myself, trying to follow up on my clearance paperwork, and the woman on the phone said, with the polite confusion of someone reading from a screen, "I'm sorry, Ms. Vance, you're already onboarded. You started Monday." I hadn't started anything. I drove to my parents' house that night with my chest so tight I thought something in it might actually tear. I found the forged documents in my father's home office. Not even hidden well, a stack of copies, my social security number, my degree transcripts, my name rewritten in David's looping, careless handwriting on the employment forms, my photo swapped for his on a badge application that some overworked HR processor had never bothered to double-check because the paperwork looked, on its surface, complete. "You had no right," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like something scraped hollow. My father didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. David needs this more than you do, he said, folding his newspaper with the calm of a man discussing weather. You'll find something else, you always do. It was mine, I earned it. And now it's the family's, he said. Which means it's his. That's how this works, Clara, it's always worked this way. I told him I would call Aegis. I would call the police. I would call anyone who would listen. He set the newspaper down for the first time. Do that, he said, and I will make sure every account with your name on it closes by Friday. I will tell your mother you attacked David out of jealousy. I will make sure no company in this city returns your calls again. You have nothing without this family, Clara. I made sure of that a long time ago. He wasn't wrong, and that was the worst part. My name was on his lease. My car was in his name for the insurance discount he'd insisted on. My savings account required his co-signature until I turned 25, a temporary arrangement from years ago that he had simply never removed, and I had never thought to fight because I never imagined I would need to. By Friday, my debit card was declined at a gas station. By the following Monday, the locks on my parents' house had been changed, and a duffel bag with 3 days of clothes sat on the porch with a note in my mother's handwriting. I'm sorry. I can't stop him. Please don't make this worse. I slept in my car for 4 nights before a woman from my old gym, someone I barely knew, let me stay on her couch out of something that felt less like friendship and more like pity. I needed money. I needed it fast and quietly in a way that wouldn't put my name in front of anyone connected to my father, anyone who might report back. That was how I ended up standing in the basement break room of Aegis Global Technologies, filling out a W-4 for a night shift janitorial contractor, 3 floors beneath the office that had my stolen job title stenciled on frosted glass. The building superintendent, a tired man named Ruiz who smelled like burnt coffee, handed me a gray polo shirt still folded in plastic. Executive floors off limits after 10, he said, not looking up from his clipboard. Everything else cart stocked, keys are on the ring, you'll do fine. I put the shirt on in the stairwell because I couldn't make myself do it in front of him. I stood there in the fluorescent light. In the building, I had beaten 7 rounds of interviews to enter honestly, and I made myself a promise instead of crying. I am not going to fight my father in a courtroom he can afford lawyers for. I am not going to scream in a lobby where security answers to David's new title. I am going to learn every hallway, every badge reader, every server closet, every login this company owns, and I am going to wait. I picked up the cart. The wheels squeaked, the same flat, tired sound it would make for the next 2 months, and I pushed it toward the elevator, toward the executive floor I wasn't allowed to clean yet, memorizing the layout of the lobby as I went. David's name was already on the directory. Gold letters, D. Vance Director, AI Defense Systems. Mine wasn't anywhere. Not yet. The trick to being invisible was simple. Move slowly enough that no one questioned your presence and never make eye contact first. I learned this within a week. Executives walked past me in hallways the way they walked past the potted plants, a mild, unconscious swerve, nothing more. Nobody wonders what a plant has seen. Nobody wonders what a plant remembers. I remembered everything. The badge readers on the 14th floor ran on a legacy system that hadn't been patched since the building's last security audit. I knew this because I emptied the shred bin outside the server room every Tuesday and Thursday, and it never bothered to cross-cut the printouts of their own change logs. The server closet on 12 had a door that didn't latch properly unless you lifted the handle while turning it. A flaw I discovered by accident while chasing a rolling trash can and never reported, because a door that doesn't latch is a door that opens quietly, without a key card ping in the log. I mapped it all. Not on paper, paper could be found. In my head, floor by floor, the way I used to map network topologies back when someone still let me do that for a living. David, meanwhile, was drowning in the job I had built for. I watched it happen in pieces, the way you watch a building settle before it cracks. The first month, he was almost charming about it, in the loud, hollow way men are charming when they've never had to earn anything. He held meetings with the confidence of someone reading cue cards he hadn't memorized. I heard him once, through the open door of the 14th floor conference room, Tell a room full of engineers that the project needed more firewall. Full stop, no object, no target, just the phrase itself, offered like a complete thought. Nobody corrected him. Nobody dared. He was the director. His last name was on the org chart in a box with a thick black border. By the second month, the charm had curdled into something meaner. He started raising his voice at the junior engineers. A woman named Priya mostly, because she was the one who kept quietly finding the holes in his understanding, and phrasing her questions carefully enough that he couldn't tell whether he was being corrected or complimented. I emptied the wastebasket in her cubicle one night and found 4 resignation letter drafts, unfinished, in the recycling. I wanted to tell her to wait. I couldn't, not yet. I started keeping the dossier the way I used to keep clean code, modular, deniable, verifiable. A folder on a personal drive, never touched from company Wi-Fi. Screenshots of the internal ticketing system, visible on unlocked monitors after hours when I emptied bins at 11 p.m. And the floor had gone dark except for the blue glow of screens nobody had bothered to lock. Photos of printed HR onboarding forms left in an open recycling bin outside the executive suite, David's signature, forged in my mother's careful cursive imitation of my own handwriting, next to a social security number that was mine. I photographed the badge application. I photographed the swapped photo. I found in a stack of discarded meeting notes an email printout where David had asked it, in writing, to reset my login. I forgot the password Clara set up, and then apparently realized his mistake and had someone shred it, except the shredder jammed on page 3, and the top third of the page survived intact in the bin, my name sitting there in his own admission, waiting for me like a gift he didn't know he'd given. Some nights I sat in the stairwell with my phone flashlight and my knees pulled to my chest, cataloging it all, and I let myself feel it for exactly as long as it took to finish. The humiliation, hot and total, of watching a man who couldn't write a for-loop sit in the chair I'd built a career to earn. Then I closed the folder, wiped my face with the back of my sleeve, and went back to emptying trash cans, because a woman who looked like she'd been crying got noticed, and I could not afford to be noticed yet. My father called twice during those weeks. I let both calls go to voicemail. The first was 3 sentences long. Clara, don't be difficult. This doesn't have to be ugly, delivered in the voice of a man who genuinely believed he'd been reasonable. The second was shorter. Call your mother back at least. I didn't, not because I didn't love her, because I knew if I heard her voice, some part of me would want to forgive faster than the truth deserved. David's real unraveling started with the government audit notice. It arrived on a Thursday. I know because I saw it in his outbox, printed and left face up on his desk when I collected his recycling. A formal notification from the Federal Contract Oversight Office requesting a full technical review of cryptographic key management protocols for the Level 4 clearance project, effective in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to demonstrate an understanding of asymmetric encryption, key rotation schedules, and secure enclave architecture. 6 weeks for a man who, I later learned from a mortified junior developer venting in the break room, had asked in a planning meeting whether the cloud was like one specific computer somewhere. I watched him change after that notice. The loud confidence drained out of him in stages. He started closing his office door. He started staying past midnight alone. The light under his door, the only one still on when I came through with the cart. And more than once I found him at his desk not working but simply sitting, staring at a monitor full of code he plainly could not read. His tie loosened, his face gray under the fluorescent light in a way that would have almost made me sorry for him, if sorry were a thing I still had room for. 3 weeks before the audit, I was pushing my cart past his office at 11 at night when I heard his voice, low, urgent, speaking too fast, the cadence of a man trying to sound casual about something that terrified him. I stopped. I didn't need to. The cart's squeaking wheel would have covered footsteps regardless. But I stood very still outside the door anyway, my hand resting on the handle of the trash bin like I was simply pausing to collect myself. No, I need someone who can actually finish it, not just look at it, David was saying. I don't care what it costs. I have 6 weeks and I can't. Look, I'll send you the access, just don't put your name on anything. I need this clean. I need it to look like it came from inside the building. A pause. Someone on the other end, tinny and distant through the phone speaker, said something I couldn't make out. I don't care where you are, David said. Romania, wherever, I don't care. I just need the encryption module rebuilt before the 11th, and I need my login sent to you tonight." My hand tightened on the trash bin handle until the plastic creaked. He was about to hand a stranger on the other side of the world direct credentialed access to a level 4 classified federal defense system. Because he could not do the job he had stolen from me, and he was too proud, or too stupid, or too much my father's son, to simply admit it and walk away. I stood in that hallway for a long moment, feeling something settle in my chest that wasn't rage anymore. Rage was loud. This was quieter. This was patience finally finding its shape. I pushed my cart forward, past his door, toward the elevator, my face arranged into the same blank, unremarkable calm I'd worn for 2 months. He had just handed me the last piece I needed. I only had to wait for him to press send. The 11th arrived like weather nobody could stop. David had 6 days left before the audit team walked onto the 14th floor, and I watched the countdown eat him alive one sleepless night at a time. He stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. He stopped pretending to run meetings and instead canceled them, one after another, citing prep time to a project he still could not explain in a single coherent sentence. Priya told a colleague, in a voice pitched low but not low enough for a woman with a mop 3 feet away, that she'd stopped bothering to ask him questions at all, because his answers had become a kind of theater, all authority and no content, like a man reciting the specials at a restaurant he'd never eaten at. I kept my phone in the pocket of my gray polo, screen dimmed to nothing, a lightweight monitoring script running quietly against the guest network logs I'd learned to pull weeks earlier through a misconfigured printer share nobody in it had ever bothered to lock down. It wasn't sophisticated. It didn't need to be. I wasn't hacking anything. I was only listening to a door David had already propped open himself. Tuesday night, the door swung wide. I was 3 carts deep into the 12th floor when my phone buzzed once against my hip, a soft vibration I'd calibrated to feel like nothing at all to anyone who wasn't waiting for it. I stepped into the stairwell, the door sighing shut behind me, and looked at the screen. An outbound transfer, large, encrypted but not encrypted enough to hide its size or its destination. A residential IP block, flagged days earlier in my own research as belonging to a known freelance contracting forum operating out of Eastern Europe. The same forum David had all but confirmed on the phone 3 weeks ago. He was sending it, not code coming in, data going out. Federal defense system architecture, cryptographic specifications, source access, moving off a secured government contract network toward a stranger with no clearance, no vetting, no legal right to touch a single line of it. I stood very still in that stairwell, my heart doing something violent and quiet in my chest, and I let myself feel the full weight of the moment for exactly 3 seconds. 3 years of a stolen job. 3 months of a stolen name stenciled on frosted glass. 2 months of gray polo shirts and squeaking wheels and swallowing my own voice so completely I sometimes forgot, for whole days, what it sounded like. 3 seconds, then I moved. I didn't run. Running gets noticed. I walked the way I'd walked for 2 months, cart abandoned by the service elevator, my badge, the janitorial badge, the only one my name had ever legitimately earned in this building, swiping through a door I had never once used after hours. The chief security officer's name was Marcus Whitfield. I knew his office because I cleaned it twice a week. I knew his hours because I'd watched his desk lamp burn late more nights than not. A man who apparently took the security in his title seriously enough to still be at his desk at 11:40 on a Tuesday. His light was on. I knocked. I don't think anyone had ever knocked on that door wearing a gray polo shirt before. He looked up, mild confusion crossing his face. The plant had moved, the plant had knocked, and I watched him prepare out of pure reflex to tell me to come back tomorrow. I didn't give him the chance. "My name is Clara Vance," I said. "Not David Vance. Clara, I am the person Aegis Global actually hired 2 months ago for the senior director position on the AI defense project. My identity was stolen and forged by my father to place my brother in the role instead. I have documentation. And right now, in real time, the man sitting in my office is transmitting classified project data to an unvetted contact in Eastern Europe, because he is not technically capable of passing your audit and never has been. Whitfield didn't say anything for a moment. His eyes moved from my face to the badge clipped to my shirt, small and laminated, C. Vance, Janitorial Services *, and something in his expression shifted, the particular stillness of a man recalculating everything he thought he understood about the last 10 weeks of his own building. I set the flash drive on his desk. My hand didn't shake. I'd promised myself 2 months ago in a fluorescent-lit stairwell that it wouldn't, and it didn't. "It's all here," I said. Forged HR onboarding forms with my social security number and his signature. Internal ticket screenshots showing him requesting password resets for credentials that were never his. Timestamp photographs of a shredded email where he admits, in writing, that I set up the very login he's been using. And as of 11:38 tonight, an active outbound data transfer to a foreign IP that your own network monitoring should already be flagging, if anyone's watching it. Whitfield was already reaching for his phone before I finished the sentence. "Pull up dashboard 4, he said to whoever answered, voice suddenly sharp, awake, entirely different from the tired evening tone he'd probably used all night. "Now, I need eyes on outbound traffic from the 14th floor, Director Vance's terminal, going back 10 minutes. A pause. I watched his face change again as the answer came back through the phone, watched the mild disbelief curdle into something colder, more official. "Lock it down," he said. "Full network isolation on that terminal, and call it in. This is a federal reporting event. This needs to go to the bureau tonight, not tomorrow." He looked up at me, phone still pressed to his ear, and for the first time in 2 months, someone in this building looked at me like I was something other than furniture. "Ms. Vance," he said, covering the receiver with his palm, "how long have you known?" "Long enough to make sure you'd believe me the first time I said it," I said. He almost smiled. It didn't quite make it all the way there. The night was too serious for that, the weight of what was about to happen too large. But something in his face loosened just slightly, the particular respect of a security professional recognizing, late and a little ashamed, that the most dangerous person in his building all along had been the one pushing a cart. "Stay close," he said. "This is about to move fast." I nodded, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for permission to exist in this building. I felt like I already belonged in it. The elevator doors opened onto the 14th floor at 12:04 a.m., and everything after that happened the way I imagine a controlled explosion happens, violent, precise, over before the mind fully registers it began. 4 federal agents moved through the office in a formation that looked rehearsed even though I knew it wasn't. Badges out, voices low and hard. Whitfield had cut David's terminal access from the security office 2 minutes earlier, which meant the first thing my brother knew of any of it was his monitor going black mid-transfer and a voice behind him saying his name, his real name, not the title on the door, in a tone that had never once been used on him before in his life. I watched from the hallway past the glass wall of the conference room, my cart forgotten somewhere by the service elevator. David turned in his chair, and even from 30 feet away I could see his face do the thing faces do when a lie finally runs out of road, the color leaving it all at once, the mouth opening on a protest that had nothing behind it. "There's been a mistake," he was saying, the words carrying faintly through the glass. "I'm the director. You don't understand, this is mine. Sir, stand up and place your hands where I can see them." He didn't, of course he didn't. David had never once in his life done the smaller, smarter thing when the louder, stupider thing was available to him. And so it took 2 agents instead of 1 to get him out of the chair, his voice climbing into something that stopped sounding like protest and started sounding like the fear underneath it. I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't move closer. I didn't need to see his face up close to know what was on it. I'd been imagining this moment in flashes, in stolen seconds in stairwells and supply closets for 2 months, and now that it was actually happening, I found I didn't need to savor it the way I'd thought I would. It was enough to simply witness it, to let the fact of it settle into my chest and replace something that had been sitting there, hard and cold, since the night I found forged documents in my father's careless handwriting on his desk. They walked him past me on the way to the elevator. He saw me, really saw me, the janitor's polo, the badge, the cart he'd probably swerved around 100 times without once reading the name on it, and something broke open in his face that was almost worse than the handcuffs. Recognition. understanding, arriving 3 months and one federal crime too late. "Clara," he said, just that. My name in his mouth, for the first time in longer than I could remember him using it like it belonged to a person instead of a problem. I didn't answer him. There wasn't anything left to say that the flash drive on Whitfield's desk hadn't already said better. My father arrived at the federal building 2 hours later, summoned by a call from David that the agents had allowed him. And I heard about what happened there secondhand, the following afternoon, from Whitfield himself, who had liaised with the Bureau overnight and seemed to take a professional, weary satisfaction in relaying it to me. My father had tried to talk his way past the front desk with the same flat, certain voice he'd used on me across a dinner table 3 years earlier. The voice that assumed the world would simply rearrange itself around his confidence, the way it always had before. He demanded to see whoever was in charge of this misunderstanding. He'd used my name, finally, out loud to a federal agent, trying to explain that his daughter would corroborate that this was all a simple family matter, nothing that required. The agent had asked him, politely, whether he was the individual who had forged the identity documents in question. He hadn't lied. I'll give him that much at the very end. He'd simply gone quiet in the particular way people go quiet when they finally understand there is no version of the story left to tell that saves them. And by morning, conspiracy and identity forgery charges had been added to a growing federal file with the Vance name at the top of it twice. I didn't go to the arraignment. I sent no message, took no calls. My mother left one voicemail. 3 days later, quiet and cracked in a way I'd never heard from her before. "I should have stopped him a long time ago, Clara. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how asterisk, and I saved it without deleting it and without calling back, not yet. Some doors I wasn't ready to close. Not everyone in that house had built the trap. But healing that had a shape I hadn't decided on yet, and it could wait until I had slept in an actual bed for more than a week." Aegis's board reviewed my file within 4 days. Not the forged file David had walked in on. Mine, the real interview scores, the whiteboard intrusion detection model 3 panelists had described, unprompted in their notes, as the best technical round we've run this decade. They reviewed the dossier I'd built in stairwells and supply closets over 2 months. And Whitfield told them, in a meeting I wasn't in the room for but heard about afterward, that whoever had assembled that evidence trail had done cleaner, more methodical incident documentation than anyone on his actual security team. They didn't just reinstate me. They apologized formally in writing and asked what it would take to make it right. I told them I wanted the office. Not a bigger one, not a better one. The one with my name already half carved into the plan of the building, the one that had been waiting, empty and misused for 2 months while I mopped the floor beneath it. On my first morning as Director Clara Vance, I stood in the doorway of that office before I stepped inside, a habit I think I'll keep for a long time, that small pause before crossing a threshold I once wasn't allowed to touch. The gray polo shirt was folded on a shelf in my apartment now, not thrown away. I wasn't ready to throw it away. It had taught me more about patience than any classroom ever had. I set my bag down on the desk. Through the window, the city was doing what it always did in the morning, indifferent and enormous and entirely unaware of what it had just watched happen 14 floors below its skyline. I sat down in the chair that had always been mine, and for the first time in 3 years, nobody in the building looked at me and saw furniture. They saw the director,